Hey there! This is the latest video of my deep dive series where I look at some of the mods that I'm using in my games, and I hope you may find that these are worth a look for use in your own games. I also want to point out that these videos will be directed from the point of view of PC users using a keyboard and mouse and otherwise running with the default settings. Now, if you're running on a Mac or a console or use a gamepad on the PC, some of the control options and elements will undoubtedly be different, but the functionality demonstrated should still be valid. Today I'm going to explore the Supplementaries mod version 2.6.28 for Minecraft Java Edition 1.20.1. Now, this is not a new mod, but it's not really an ancient one either. However, it is one that I've come to love, and I use it for all my survival games. Now, it's not the kind of mod that you build a mod pack around, but it is definitely the kind of mod that you are sure to include in every mod pack. I think the best way to describe it is not as a single mod, but rather as a collection of tiny mods. Micro mods if you prefer. Some of them are related or complement each other, but most are completely standalone, and almost all of them can be configured, tweaked, or turned off altogether. The bottom line is that there's probably something for everyone here, and while that makes it a great mod to have in your world, it can make it kind of a pain in the butt to demo in a short showcase video without the whole project becoming a full-blown miniseries. However, I will give it a shot, and so my apologies ahead of time for the length of this one and the fact that inevitably some stuff will get missed or cut. Let's start off by exploring some of the small changes you will find in your world. The first will be the addition of occasional waysigns. Now, whether these spawn and where they spawn are randomly determined. Now, each signpost will have one or two signs, and they will point to the nearest village. Now, sometimes they may point to another structure entirely, so you might want to be careful before blindly running down the path indicated, or else you might accidentally stumble into the annual picnic at the local pillager outpost, and that can be unfortunate. If you venture into the deeper and darker caves, you may find a small cluster of clay urns. Now, you can't pick them up, but you can smash them, and each smashed urn will drop something of value, though the exact value can vary wildly, ranging from bones or ash to emeralds or even enchanted armor pieces. Now, the value of the item or items dropped can be increased by smashing the urns with an item enchanted with the fortune enchantment. Now, the urns add a little extra flair and a little extra detail and a little extra excitement, and it's a chance to earn extra loot. While running around in the game world, pay close attention to the shoreline, especially in dry and arid biomes where you may find a wild plant with blue flowers growing there. This is wild flax, and when you break it, you will gain some flax seeds. You can also score some flax seeds as chest loot or through the wandering trader. Now, once you do get your hands on some flax seeds, plant them in tilled soil and you will soon grow some flax. Flax plants are 2 blocks high when they're fully grown and ready to harvest. Now, a harvested plant will give you a flax crop and 1 or 2 handfuls of flax seeds. The seeds can obviously be replanted, but the flax itself can be used to craft string, rope, sacks, fodder, doormats, and daub. I'll talk more about these items a little later. You are probably familiar with the Wandering Merchant from vanilla Minecraft. Apparently, the Supplementaries mod supplements the Wandering Merchant with their own Red Merchant. See what I did there? The Red Merchant generally looks and acts in a similar fashion to the Wandering Merchant, except that he's, red. However, when it comes to inventory and trades, there is a huge difference. The Red Merchant offers an assortment of items that are mostly from the Supplementaries mod and mostly explosive in nature. These items will be covered in greater detail later on. A final note and another major difference between the Red Merchant and his wandering colleague is that the Red Merchant is kind of hard to find. In the early game, he's almost impossible to find. However, you can increase the chances of encountering him by remaining in the same area over a long period of time, by changing the game difficulty, or killing the Ender Dragon. However, these won't make his visits frequent per se, just that he'll drop by more often. I've also heard that leaving out milk and cookies also works, but that bit of trivia is highly suspect, so try it at your own risk. With the Supplementaries mod, fire will burn stuff just like it does in vanilla Minecraft. However, unlike vanilla Minecraft, something destroyed through fire may leave behind some ash. and ash drops to the ground and can pile up just like snow does. And just like snow, it can be harvested with a shovel. Harvested ash can be crafted into decorative blocks or soap, and I will talk about these later. You can also find ash just sitting around in basalt deltas in the nether. However, you don't want to leave your ash just sitting out in the open in the overworld, as rain will wash away ash layers. So it is always a good idea to harvest it or cover your ash, just in case. Some folks don't like visitors, and some folks really don't like visitors, and they will eagerly employ whatever means necessary to make their point to anybody even considering an approach to the front door. And that's where the bamboo spikes from the Supplementaries mod come in. They're blocks of, razor sharp death that just don't say buzz off, but imply a particularly nasty and painful experience that's not suitable for discussion at dinner parties or most any other place except possibly the emergency room or the morgue. And if you run the Supplementaries mod in conjunction with the Quark or Create mods, then you can move blocks of bamboo spikes with pistons or contraptions, and as a result, spikes will deal extra damage. And if all that was not enough to ward off any curious passerby, these spikes can be infused with potion effects to increase the pain, suffering, and the overall ick factor. So get yours today. Some assembly required, adult supervision recommended. Minecraft has had wooden signs almost since the beginning, and there are a lot of useful things you can do with a sign. However, Supplementaries brings us to Blackboard, and compared to vanilla signs, Blackboards are remarkable. First off, they can be drawn on in a freeform fashion, similar to the basic paint program that comes with Windows. Except with the default settings in Supplementaries, you can only add white to a black background. Now, another key difference is that the Blackboard drawing will persist even when the Blackboard is broken down and stuck in your inventory. The current drawing can be previewed in your inventory via the tooltip, and then just plop it back down in your world and your drawing is once again visible to admiring art lovers, or even those less admiring or less admirable art critics. Now, Blackboards can be duplicated just like banners, and you can erase a blackboard with soap, or if you prefer to prevent your masterpiece from being erased, you can apply honeycomb to it in order to wax it and thus prevent changes. And if the default blackboard is not doing it for you, other colors can be enabled in the config files. So chalk up another point for the Supplementaries mod. Players are not the only residents of your Minecraft world. They share your world with a number of different mobs, some of which can be very helpful and others are considerably less so. However, some of the more helpful ones are even more helpful if they're conveniently located nearby. But to bring them from some faraway and remote location to a closer, more convenient location usually requires the player to reenact the story of the Pied Piper and lure the useful mob across the vast distances. And while the player is busy trying to keep the attention of their potential new pet, friend, or economic resource, the odds of falling into a hole, being attacked by bad guys, or falling into a hole while being attacked by bad guys goes up exponentially. Again, the Supplementaries mod comes to the rescue with the handy-dandy cage. And yeah, the name's kinda lacking in marketing appeal, but you get the idea. Players can use cages to capture small mobs, and to capture something it must be small. Then hold the cage in your hand and left or right click on the intended target. Cages can be placed in the game world with or without occupants. By default, the cages are set to trap only smaller mobs. Pigs and wolves are too big, but pretty much anything smaller than those will probably fit. Now, while in a cage, the mobs will not age, nor can the player interact with them. Curiously enough, though, chickens can and will still lay eggs, and they fall outside of the cage. Vanilla Minecraft has candles, and here they are supplemented with candle holders, which can be placed on walls, floors, and even ceilings. What's more, they can be stacked in groups of up to 4 to create candelabras and chandeliers, and if that's not cool enough, the stacked candles increase the light produced, making these candelabras and chandeliers viable primary light sources. But there's love for torches as well, with sconces, which is a fancy name for torch holder. Now, both sconces and candles and candle holders can be lit up and put out through most of the standard options that produce fire, including fire charges, flaming arrows, gunpowder, burning mobs, and so on. They can be unlit by waterlogging or using a water splash potion, but unlike regular torches, they will not break when waterlogged. Now, there's also a sconce lever, which looks and feels like a torch, but can trigger secret redstone signals. As an added bonus, the candle holders come in 17 decorator colors, so be the first on your block to collect all 17. While still keeping the tone and the topic light, the mod offers some new lantern types to widen your lighting options. Now it includes the copper and crimson lanterns, where the copper lantern appears to be a copper metal lantern and the crimson lantern appears to be a traditional Asian red paper lantern. Now both look great, but they are kind of expensive, and in both cases the recipes will produce 2 lanterns. Now if you've ever wanted to put a sign on the floor facing up, you now can with Doormats from the Supplementaries mod. Now each mat takes only 2 farmed flax plants to create, and they support up to 3 lines of text. They can only be placed lying flat on a horizontal surface, but by default they can be edited even after they've already been placed. They also keep your family and guests from tracking sand, dirt, and gravel all over your beautifully maintained base. Call now, operators are standing by. Now what takes up more space, a stack of feathers or a stack of cobblestone? It's a trick question. They both take up the same amount of space, but now you can cram a whole lot more feathers into a stack with feather blocks. Just group 9 feathers on a crafting table to create a feather block. And as you might expect, you can use these blocks to fall safely from even the most ridiculous heights. Now banners are great and all, but sometimes you just want an honest-to-goodness old-fashioned flag. And once again, the Supplementaries mod steps in to help. For 6 wool blocks and a stick, you can create your own flag, and flags come in the same colors as dyed wool. Just plop them down on top of sticks that have been placed or stacked in the world, and your flag would be flapping in the breeze if there actually was any. Instead, you'll get the stiff as a board look as popularized in televised moon landings. But flags of a single color can get pretty boring pretty quick, so the mod also allows you to take existing banners and copy their pattern onto a flag. Now if you can put it on a banner, you can put it on a flag. Now if you work with gravel a lot, you're probably buried up to your eyeballs with flint. Now flint can be mighty useful, but sometimes it can bring its own storage headaches. However, with the Supplementaries mod, you can reduce your flint storage problem by 89% with the use of Flint Blocks. Just spread out 9 flint on a full-size crafting grid and you can create the blocks, and using flint blocks for storage will dramatically clear things up. However, the most interesting use for flint blocks is to mechanically start fires through the use of pistons. Now when you move a flint block with a piston so it rubs against a block of iron, or pretty much any block that is iron-like, it will leave an open block and fire will be produced on the newly opened block. And that fire will ignite adjacent flammable blocks just as you might expect. It also works in reverse. If you move the iron block against a flint block, you'll still get sparks. Now if you like to decorate your builds and the old vanilla flower pot's not exactly doing it for you, may I suggest the flower box. Now it's crafted with a block of dirt and some wooden slabs, and it can hold 3 plants. In addition, you can plop it down in the middle of a block or up against the side of a different block. And while I've used the same plants in each box in my examples, you are completely free to mix and match to your heart's content. If you play Minecraft to satisfy your inner rancher, then you've raised plenty of livestock in-game, and you know just how much of a hassle it can be to feed each animal individually. Now you can feed your animals to breed babies and grow those babies into adults through the magic of Supplementaries' Fire and Forget Fodder block. Just plop some of these down in your livestock pens and your animals will self-serve and continue to do so as long as the fodder lasts. Everything will run as if you were still feeding your beasties by hand, and that includes breeding cooldowns. One of my favorite building styles is the old open timber Wattle Daub style that was so prevalent in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. However, the ability to represent these kinds of buildings is a bit challenging in Minecraft, where we work with blocks that are 1 cubic meter in size. However, the Supplementaries mod has come through for us with Wattle Daub blocks, including a couple of variants with cross spaces to add some style and variety to your builds. Now if you need even more variety, you can build the framing and leave it empty, or you can fill it with another block type entirely. Or you can even create blocks of daub without the framing. While exploring shipwrecks or negotiating with wandering traders, you might encounter one of these cool globes. Now they make a wonderful addition to any office, study, or wizard's tower, and the globe pattern is unique to your world seed. However, these items are not purely for decoration. You can spin the globe, and when you do, it reports your current coordinates. You can also trigger this behavior through a redstone signal. So why not rush out and get one of your own and take it for a spin? The notice board can hold and display either a written book, a map, or a banner pattern. When it's displaying a written book, it will only show one page at a time. The text resolution that is displayed depends on the amount of text on the page. Add white space or more text to make it render smaller. Once given a redstone pulse, it will turn the page. It can be waxed to prevent interactions. Pedestal blocks can be used as a building block to create some pretty cool looking columns, but the primary purpose is to display items without those items despawning. Now most items will float over the pedestal and slowly turn, but a few items have special behaviors. Removing an item from a pedestal will generate an observer detectable update, which makes these a useful trigger for traps. Now the trigger can be prevented by swapping out the removed item with a sack. Now where have I seen that before? When an end crystal is placed on a pedestal, it emits the same enchanting mojo as 3 bookshelves, which is to say that one could max out their enchantment space by replacing the 15 bookshelf blocks with 5 end crystals on pedestals for the ultimate and cool wizard decor. On the surface, it would appear that the planter offered by the Supplementaries mod is just a larger flower pot. And in fact, you can plant any kind of flower or sapling into it and they will serve as a decoration, but they won't grow or produce anything. However, unlike a flower pot, you can plant crops in these planters and those crops will grow and can be harvested just as if they'd been planted in regular farmland. In addition, the planters have an advantage in that they require no water and they can't be trampled. Now this makes the planters very practical in the overworld and especially in the nether where freestanding water can't exist. For that special somebody on your server, the Supplementaries mod offers you the chance to give them a personalized and private present. Now presents are storage blocks that can hold 1 stack of an item. Now the sender can address the present to another player and from that point it can only be opened by the sender and the recipient. Presents can be picked up and put in the inventory while keeping their contents intact. Likewise, the present can be set down in the world where it will exist as a block and not an entity. Now if you want to give something to somebody you are not particularly fond of, there's always the option of using a trapped present. Now these look and act similar to regular presents, however once something's inserted into the present and the prime button is pressed, the trap is set. Now for the most part, opening a trap present will produce a noise, a puff of smoke, and the contents of the present. However, if the contents of the present can be activated, including and especially blocks of TNT, then those items will be activated upon opening. Just something to remember, anyone can open a trap present, so your little surprise could blow up in your face. Literally. One of the superstars of the Supplementaries mod is the amazing and highly versatile rope. Now for starters, and as you would probably expect, you can climb up a rope. And you can even fall down a rope. It won't slow you down, but you won't take damage when you reach the bottom. Ropes can be anchored to the bottom and sides of blocks, and placement of additional rope blocks work like placing additional scaffolding blocks, except each new rope block extends the rope downward. Now breaking the top rope block will break apart the entire length of rope. You can attach things to the end of a rope. By applying more rope to the existing rope, you extend the existing rope and thus lower the object on the end. Now if you use the rope with a bare hand, you start removing rope blocks and thus reeling the existing rope, which then raises the item attached to it. If you have an inner Robin Hood or William Tell waiting to burst out, you can cut ropes using projectile weapons. Now like scaffolding, ropes can branch horizontally from existing rope, and also like scaffolding, you can only go so far without additional support for the rope. Additionally, horizontal rope has a hitbox and you can walk on it, but you'll be hindered a bit. Rope can be crafted with an arrow to produce a rope arrow, which will drop up to 32 blocks of rope from wherever it lands. Rope can also be used as a kind of fuse to transfer flame as well. Kids, don't try this at home. Sacks are essentially early game shulker boxes, but if you're able to grow your own flax, they're incredibly cheap. Unfortunately, they will have a very limited capacity, and if you try to carry more than 2 at a time, you'll become encumbered, and the more you carry beyond that, the worse the encumbrance becomes. Now, once encumbered, it'll take a short while for the effect to wear off, even after you set the sacks back down. While the mod will automatically generate Waysigns to guide players to points of interest in the world, you can craft your own signposts. Now, these are special signs that point in a given direction, and up to 2 of them can be placed on a fence post or place stick. Their exact orientation will depend on where the player is facing when the sign is placed. Now, a placed sign will always point to the left, but can be reversed with a shift click. Clicking on one of these signs with a compass will make it point to whatever the compass is currently pointing at. And finally, they support all dyes and inks, just like vanilla signs. Most blocks that can be colored or coated with something can be washed clean with soap. Now, this can be done in a crafting grid, or it can be done in the game world directly. Soap can be used in this way to also clean blackboards, antique globes, maps, sticky pistons, and tip spikes. It also leaves a fresh and clean scent. If you throw 9 soap into a crafting grid, you can create a soap block, which you can then place next to a wet sponge, and when you blow air through the wet sponge using a bellows, you'll produce a steady stream of bubbles. It's great fun on a summer's day. Players can craft clay statues that are basically humanoid in shape and 1 block tall. They can be handed items that they will then display, and if a redstone current is applied, the statue will actively wave. If storage space is tight, you can save a bit of space by converting your stacks of sugar into sugar cubes. Plop 9 sugar into a crafting grid and you have a sugar cube. However, be careful about storing these bad boys as blocks in the game world, as they will dissolve in water just like the real thing. As you might expect, the bellows moves air. It's directional, but can be placed to face in any direction. It can be activated through a redstone signal or by compressing it, either by using it or stepping on it. When activated via redstone, the force of the air moved will depend on the strength of the redstone signal. When the bellows is actively working, it can push away entities in front of it up to 5 blocks away. When the bellows is blowing into a furnace, it speeds up whatever the furnace is actively smelting or cooking. It also refreshes fire blocks in front of it, which keeps those flames burning as long as the bellows keeps working. And when the bellows is blowing directly on a copper block, it will speed up the aging process as well. The clock block is a simple, elegant, and incredibly useful in-game clock. It visually shows the current game world time, and it can be used in conjunction with a comparator to produce a signal from 0 to 15 that is proportional to the in-game time. 0 is just after sunrise, and 15 is just before sunrise. This makes it a more reliable redstone device for detecting daytime, as daylight sensors can be fooled when it's raining. As an added bonus, the block produces an update every in-game hour on the hour, and that update can be detected and signaled by an observer. Plus, you can just plain old click on it and it'll give you exact time as a status message. The cog block is essentially the same as redstone dust, but in a block form. Therefore, it can convey a redstone signal up to 14 blocks away. However, what it was specifically designed to provide is a simple and easy way to transmit a redstone signal straight up, and that makes it worth the price of admission all by itself. The crank acts as an analog lever. Each click, or shift click, will advance, or reverse, the crank 1 notch, which will increase, or reduce, the redstone signal by 1. When connected to a redstone signal, the crystal display will show the strength of the signal. A signal of strength 1 through 9 will show the matching number on the display. A signal of strength 10 will show up as a 0. Signals stronger than 10 will produce a symbol. No signal at all will logically show no indication on the display. And then there is the Dispenser Minecart, which is, a dispenser mounted on a minecart. And it works pretty much like you would expect it to. The Faucet is a powerful block. and if connected to a fluid-filled block, such as this waterlogged stair block, it can be turned on to pour out water from that block. If there's a container below the faucet, then fluid will be poured into the container, and if left on, it will continue to fill the container. If the space below the faucet is filled with a block that reacts to water, such as a sponge, concrete powder, or the sugar cube, then turning the faucet on will affect the block just as if it touched water. The fun with faucets is not limited to just fluids either. When attached to an inventory, turning on the faucet will start emptying the inventory at the rate of 1 item per second. If you're concerned about time and timing, then you might be particularly interested to know that the Supplementaries mod has brought you the Hourglass. In its default state, the Hourglass is empty, but you can insert a number of different materials and liquids into it, and each material has its own fall rate, which means that the Hourglass can be used to measure different lengths of time depending on what exactly was placed in it. To pull a substance out of the Hourglass, just right-click on it with an empty hand, and then you're free to insert a new material. Hourglasses can be read through redstone comparators, and the Hourglass can be reset using the Turntable block. So the Hourglass can be very useful for use in timing circuits and devices. For every season, turn, turn, turn. And that's just what the Turntable block does. When activated with a redstone signal, it will turn the block it's facing if possible. Different blocks behave in different ways and on different axes. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, the Turntable block can be used to turn the Hourglass. However, it can also be used to turn other blocks, especially on the horizontal axis. The Turntable block is an excellent companion to the Pulley Block, which can be used to extend or retract a rope or rope-like object, such as a chain. The material used is stored in the pulley itself, and if a rope is attached to the pulley is manually extended or retracted, the necessary segments are taken from or restored to the pulley's inventory. If you like to control your lighting via redstone, the Redstone Illuminator might be just the thing you've been looking for. It gives off a variable amount of light based on the strength of the redstone signal it's receiving. The catch is that the stronger the redstone signal, the weaker the illumination. In other words, an illuminator that's not connected to redstone power at all, it's fully illuminated. And while an illuminator receiving a full strength signal will be completely extinguished. And of course, there are all the corresponding states in between. The spring launcher seems to be something straight out of a Mythbusters episode. It won't work on blocks, but when activated, it will launch entities a considerable height or distance. If an entity happens to fall or land on the launcher while it's already extended, there will be an impressive trampoline action, but you need to get the timing right or something far less impressive will happen. You may have seen a weather or wind vane on top of an older building or even in a movie or show. Now you can put one in your Minecraft world. Normally, they show which direction the wind is blowing and roughly how strong the wind is. But in Minecraft, they actually generate a redstone signal based on the weather. Clear weather produces no signal, while rain will send out a signal of 1 and a thunderstorm will send out a signal of 2. When the altimeter is in your hand, use it and it will report your Y level in-game. It's not super useful if you are running a map mod, but for those of you that don't use those mods, this can be a very useful device. Antique ink is a rare item that can be found in urns in deep caves or as fishing loot, or can be purchased from master cartographers. When applied to a sign, it changes the font into something more retro, and when it's applied to a globe, it transforms it into an old-timey sepia globe, and when applied to a map, it produces an antique treasure map appearance. You can make bombs. Bombs are throwable objects that act a bit like a hand grenade. However, it won't destroy most blocks, but it does wreak havoc on entities and blocks that can be broken by water, such as grass and flowers. Now, blue bombs are just like regular bombs, but they have a slight pause before exploding, and they deal significantly more damage over a much greater area. They can only be bought from the red merchant and possibly found as chest loot. As you can see here, they can be a useful tool for harvesting your livestock and mowing the yard at the same time. If you enjoy blowing bubbles on a summer's day and you've always wished you could do that in Minecraft, then the Supplementaries mod has something special just for you. Introducing the bubble blower, and if it runs out of soap, just add more. If you want to release your inner musician, you can craft a flute thanks to the Supplementaries mod. The primary purpose of the flute is to summon all your nearby and non-sitting pets. However, you can bind the flute to a specific pet, and then when the flute's played again, only the bound pet will respond. You can also play the flute just for the hell of it. By default, there are a number of songs available and the game will randomly choose one. However, if you have a specific favorite, you can name the flute to the name of the preferred song, and the flute will only play that song. And if the provided songs are not doing it for you, there's a mechanic for recording additional songs. The details are on the mod's wiki. One of the top hits of the Supplementaries mod is the Quiver. You can't craft them, but you can find them. The most likely source of quivers will be skeletons, but mind you that the same skeletons will be carrying and using the quivers, so there's an element of risk versus reward. The quiver has its own inventory slots, and you can store up to a full stack of arrows in each slot. Arrows are inserted into the quiver by dragging the stack to the quiver in the inventory and right-clicking. They will be dropped into the first available slot. If there's an existing partial stack of the same kind of arrow already in the quiver, then the new arrows will be added to the existing stack. By default, arrows are pulled out of the first stack on the left until it's exhausted, and then from the next stack to the right, and so on until all the arrows have been exhausted. You can choose which stack is the active stack by placing the quiver in the hotbar, using it, and then using the mouse wheel to select the desired stack. A novel new item is the Slingshot. You might think you know what this does, and you would probably be wrong. You can't run around and terrorize all the critters in the area. The Slingshot is a tool, not a weapon. With the Slingshot in hand, you can launch blocks and they will plop themselves down wherever they land, if applicable. When a Slingshot has been enchanted with the Stasis enchantment, the shot will no longer arc, but fly in a straight line instead, and you will see an outline of where the fired block will land. Be warned that most shots will only connect on the side facing you, so trying to get a block to stick from a very shallow angle is probably not going to work. Using a wrench on a block will rotate the block. Blocks can be rotated on all axes. Cartographers can now sell adventurer maps. These maps will lead you to a given structure, but you don't know which kind of structure until you open the map. It's kind of a grab bag. Adventurer maps can lead to desert pyramids, igloos, jungle temples, mine shafts, ocean ruins, pillager outposts, ruin portals, shipwrecks, and villages. In the nether, they lead to bastions, and in the end, they guide the way to end cities. Each destination has its own icon. Buying multiple adventure maps from the same cartographer will simply get you additional copies of the same map. You don't have to be a 15th century French humpback to ring bells that are normally too high to reach. Now you can attach ropes or chains to the bell and ring the bell by tugging on the rope or chain. Normally, banners must be hung on walls. Now you can hang them from the bottom of blocks. For example, ceilings. If you think that Minecraft cakes are flat and boring, think again. Now they can all be fancy and layered. Just add a second cake to the first and you're good to go. Cake slices come off the top layer first. Gunpowder can be placed in exactly the same manner as redstone dust. It can then be ignited and the flame will quickly spread down the line of gunpowder, igniting flammables all along the way. Basically, it does exactly what you think and hope it would do. If you play Minecraft as a form of meditation, you can now set up your own Zen garden. Just set down a bunch of gravel and break out your hoe. You can rake the gravel in the direction you are facing. I think you'll find it surprisingly calming. In vanilla Minecraft, lanterns can sit on top of or hang from the bottom of something. But with the Supplementaries mod, they can now be mounted directly on walls with no further hardware necessary. It works on most modded lanterns as well. And that wraps it up for the Supplementaries mod. At least for this video. There's still plenty more that I didn't touch upon, but I hope you got a pretty good impression of the mod all the same, and I hope that you'll try it in your own games. So until next time, I hope this finds you and yours in good health, good spirits, and perhaps a touch of good fortune. Cheers!